All right, let's talk about med spas. Injectable treatments like Botox and fillers, they're absolutely everywhere now, a staple of the modern beauty world. But here's something you might not realize. Behind these seemingly simple procedures is a whole complex web of rules that can have some really serious consequences. So what are these hidden rules? Let's get into it.
It's so easy to think of getting injectables as just another beauty treatment, right? Something you can just schedule between a haircut and a manicure. But is it really that straightforward?
Not quite. In reality, these are medical procedures, and they're governed by a pretty strict legal and regulatory landscape. Understanding that landscape is absolutely critical, whether you're a patient looking for a provider or a professional actually working in the field.
And this really brings us to the heart of the issue, the med spa boom. You've got this incredible, surging popularity on one side and a whole set of serious medical regulations on the other. So let's explore this intersection and what it means for everyone involved. The scale we're talking about here is just massive. The demand for Botox and dermal fillers has absolutely exploded. And with that kind of growth, it becomes more important than ever that everyone understands the rules of the game. This isn't just about looking good. It's about patient safety and, well, the letter of the law. So this leads us to maybe the most important question. Who is actually allowed to perform these injections? The answer isn't as simple as you might think, and it all comes down to a really key legal concept. And that concept is called the scope of practice. Basically, this defines what a healthcare professional is legally allowed to do based on their specific license. For injectables, this varies a lot, depending on their credentials, and, crucially, which state they're practicing in.
So how does this actually play out? Well, there's a pretty clear hierarchy. At the top, you've got physicians, MDs or DOs, with the broadest authority. They can inject and they can supervise others. Then you have nurse practitioners, physician assistants, and registered nurses, who can often perform injections, but almost always under very specific conditions, usually with some form of physician supervision. The big takeaway here is that you can't assume these rules are the same everywhere. It's a huge mistake. A procedure that's totally routine for an RN in one state could be a serious violation in another, like California, which has some incredibly strict requirements.
But the regulations don't just stop with who is holding the syringe. Nope. They also dictate how that person is allowed to operate. This involves a whole set of rules for training, for supervision, and for the medical protocols they have to follow. A basic professional license is really just the starting point. It's like the entry ticket. To be truly compliant and, to ensure patient safety, practitioners need specialized training in injection techniques, facial anatomy, and how to handle any potential complications. Then professional certification shows an even higher level of commitment, and all of it has to happen under the umbrella of physician oversight and pre-approved written protocols. Okay, let's just focus on that last point for a minute, because physician oversight is one of the most important pieces of this entire legal puzzle. The specific level and type of supervision required is a major factor in figuring out if a med spa is even operating legally.
Supervision usually falls into one of two buckets. With direct supervision, the physician has to be physically on site, like in the building when the procedure is happening. With indirect supervision, they just need to be reachable for a consultation, maybe by phone, but they don't have to be in the facility. And it's the state laws, like California's Business and Professions Code, that spell out exactly which level is required for which type of practitioner. Getting that wrong can have some pretty big consequences.
Now let's switch gears to another critical area, informed consent. This is so much more than just getting a patient to sign a form before the treatment starts. It's a vital legal and ethical dialogue. Yeah, treating consent like it's just a checkbox to tick off is a fundamental misunderstanding of the whole process. It's not a formality, it's a foundational obligation to the patient, making sure they are an active and informed participant in their own care. So, what does a real consent conversation actually look like? It means clearly explaining the procedure, talking about the specific risks involved, the benefits they can expect, and even what the alternatives are. And crucially, it has to be a two-way street. It has to give the patient a genuine opportunity to ask questions and get them answered completely. Of course, even with the best practices and intentions, complications can happen. That's why understanding liability and having the right protections in place is absolutely essential for any medical spa. When you look at where things most often go wrong legally, it's actually fascinating. The biggest risks aren't always from a botched procedure itself, but from failures in the process. Things like improper consent, a lack of the right supervision, or just plain poor documentation. These are the kinds of administrative gaps that can open the door to serious legal trouble. So to guard against all this, practices really need a defensive strategy. That means carrying comprehensive malpractice insurance, keeping meticulous patient charts, documenting every single procedure and every consent discussion, and having clear, established protocols for what to do when something unexpected happens.
So after unpacking all of this, scope of practice, supervision, consent, liability, what's the one big idea that ties it all together? What's the ultimate takeaway here? It's this, simple. Every rule, every regulation, every single piece of paperwork we've talked about is ultimately designed to do one thing: protect the patient. Following the law isn't just about avoiding lawsuits. It's about providing safe, ethical, and professional care. And that leaves us with a final question for patients and professionals alike. Given all the complexity we've just unpacked, is the standard truly being met? It's a question worth asking. Thanks for joining me for this explainer.